Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah. And yeah, welcome to Led by Life. It's been a little while since we've had our last episode. Kind of had a little bit of a break there through the holidays, the beginning of the year. And this week we're on Gene Key 26. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Welcome.
earlier, what? No, you go.
I was just going to say welcome and happy new year, new human design year. We were just talking about this over voice note the last couple of days about how it's the human design new year. So it feels like we're only just kind of getting started into the new year.
Does it feel correct for you?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think the couple of weeks have been a little unsteady, and so it now just feels like, okay, getting a bit more settled into the new year. Yeah.
Yeah, earlier I was thinking, because it's been some time since you and I have come together to record, really. And I had this whole wonderful, thought out introduction in my head, talking on all these different points that have felt very synchronistic and um this, how our theme of being led by life and just kind of in that flow. And then I lost it. I started and I don't even remember what I was going to say. But I feel that too, that the beginning of the calendar year did not feel like for me the beginning of a new start of a new year. I've never really liked January, like New Year's Eve and stuff. And I think it's because maybe as a kid, um, my parents were a little bit more I guess strict. I don't know if I would say strict, right? But maybe given where I grew up, a lot of my friends went out, stayed out past midnight and partied and I never really, maybe a few times as I got later into later years of high school. But yeah, so that's just kind of always carried through. I'm not really one to celebrate the last day of the year or the
Yeah.
beginning of a new year. Yeah.
Yeah. I just like the opportunity for reflection. So that's what I like about the new year. I just like that it does give us an opportunity to kind of take stock of, it's like a point in time, and it just kind of gives us this opportunity to reset. That's what I like about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I was in bed by about 10 o'clock on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Same. I listened to that. I started listening to the video you sent me from Karen Curry Parker. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll link it below. It was a good video.
It was a really good one. But so far, I haven't gotten all the way through, but back to what you were saying about reflection, I kind of really like that how in human design there's four quarters, four seasons, so to speak, right? And that the new year actually comes at the tail end of the fourth quarter. So I really like that.
Yeah, and it's related to the cross of the Sphinx, isn't it? And then the Vessel of
Sphinx
Love.
or tension?
No, I'm pretty sure it's the cross of the Sphinx that's because
Maybe.
the center has the 8 gates, and 4
Mhm.
of them are the Vessel of Love, and the other 4 are the cross of the Sphinx. And
Mm.
so I'm pretty sure that that's when I think the new quarters start with each of the gates of the Sphinx, and then the equinox is the seasons change, which is the cross of the Vessel of Love. Don't quote me on that, but I have a feeling it's all related, like the timing
Yeah,
in the,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Mhm. There was something else that I wanted to mention today, given going into the new like human design year.
Was it
Um,
Pluto going into Aquarius?
no,
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I can't remember, but if it comes to me, um, you know, I'll let you know, bring it up. But yeah, so welcome everyone. Here we are, Gene Key 26, the gate of the egoist. Um, in the Gene Keys, at its shadow is pride, right? I have remember that one? Yeah. Pride, and the gift is artfulness, and then at the Siddhi it's invincibility. And it's funny. Oh, go ahead.
Invincibility.
Oh, invisibility. uh, Clearly I was thinking that it had a quality of being invincible, which is probably not really there. Not true. I actually have this one defined.
I thought you did, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I read it like 3 times, which is probably the most I've read any one of these.
Really?
Yeah. And I think it's really just the timing, right? You know, we had like anticipated getting into it and then again and then finally here we are today. So yeah, I don't really know. Well, what's like coming up for you as far as like the 26th gate?
Uh, what's coming up for me? A lot around like materialism, the
Mm,
material plane. Uh, it talks a lot about marketing, like marketing of oneself and like the salesperson kind of energy. And in the lower expression, it's rooted in fear. But then in the gift frequency, it's more of like a playful kind of trickster energy. And it's like recognizing the ego, and or being aware of the ego, but the energy behind the marketing or the like selling of oneself
mhm,
um, is more, yeah, it's a higher frequency.
mhm,
It's more playful as well. What really stood out to me probably the most was like this idea that we don't have to force things.
yeah.
And in order to be, I suppose, materially successful or taken care of. And yeah, I guess that's something I want to explore a little bit more, because that's something I've been feeling into myself, is like just this tiredness of trying to force things, especially
Mhm,
as it relates to business and work and, having material like money or resources. And yeah, just this feeling like I just don't want to force things anymore. But
mhm,
but there's so much conditioning around needing to work hard in order to make a living, in order to, like, all those narratives that
mhm.
I've grown up. How about you?
Yeah, well, I'll say that when I was kind of trying to accumulate all of the different information around 26, right? I opened up the human design book and I recognized that the channel is a channel of surrender. Yeah, the channel of surrender.
Mm.
And I just kind of like laughed for a second because um I I feel as if currently, like in my life right now, there is a sense of pride that might be showing up. And the idea that just at a glance, reading that it's a channel of surrender and how it like connects with the spleen, which is very instinctual, um, intuitive, fears come up in there as well. I'm just like laughing at myself or of life. And I think that that's kind of funny because, like you mentioned, it has this energy of also being a trickster,
Mm.
right? Being able to manipulate, but in the sense of changing for the benefit of what's in front or outside, right in front, right? And at the Siddhi, something I took of invincibility, no, sorry. Yeah, invisibility, right? Is how something that just kept staying with me was like how nothing really matters. And like maybe that's funny.
Mm.
Maybe it's not, right? And I think that that can be sometimes hard for people to sort of hear, right?
Mm.
Um, but for me, it's also, so I recognize like all of these different energies are going to kind of show up or respond to an individual very individualistically. And I say that because I was a little bit curious right before we started today to know like what line the 26th is in for me and what planet um, governs it, because I don't like the idea of marketing. Like I
Mm.
don't, I up until recently have my own private practice, and that's one of the things that I absolutely was like very stuck on, and kind of feeling like you were saying, like of this forcing of, um, you know, just feeling like I needed to really do a lot um, to make something come of the business and the practice and everything. And so I noticed that like the 26th energy for me is in it's governed by my north node, which doesn't come until like the second half of life, is what I'm understanding. So honestly, reading that, it kind of get like released a little bit of pressure,
Mm.
because I feel as if I don't know like what business venture or whatever that will look like next, whatever entrepreneurial kind of thing I'll take on next. But I feel like it kind of gave me just that little tidbit of information gave me some permission to not feel like I have to be an expert in knowing how to sell myself or my
Mm.
services. And I'm like,
And
maybe that's just not, I'm not there yet.
yeah. And we've talked about this a lot, like going back to this idea that we have everything we need right now. Like
Mhm.
our needs are taken care of because both of us have been going through a bit of a journey with our relationship to money and
Mhm.
material things. And yeah, it really is about selling this energy, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I was saying about marketing, how you struggle to, or you found it challenging to market yourself. And I was thinking about the eighth gate because that's also kind of about marketing, but it's a different energy. It's a different type of marketing. It's more about like marketing new ideas and inspiration and like, do you know what I'm saying? Because it's part of the channel of inspiration. Because I was thinking about my own relationship with marketing and like, I don't seem to have a problem with putting myself out there and marketing myself. But when it comes to selling and trying to like sell my products or things that I've done in the past in my business, I've really struggled with that too. And I don't have this gate defined in my chart, but I have the eighth gate, which is all about marketing yourself in more of an artistic, creative way.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying here? I'm just
Yeah.
feeling.
So it's interesting how like, because it also says, this energy can also be quite a salesperson. So it's interesting to see you reflect back that like for you, marketing and selling are like two different things. And for me, they're like the same.
Mm.
Like if I was to be selling something, I'd be marketing it. But I also don't have a lot of experience in this area of life either. So I could obviously see where they're probably different.
Mm.
And I also think that there's a difference in like the frequency of maybe the 8th and the 26th, just because they're in different circuits.
Totally. Totally. And the feeling I'm getting is like the 8th is all about promoting new ideas and inspiration and creativity and like new things that need to come into the world. And I suppose the 26th is about promoting and marketing. It's just different, you know, what the words we're using for that
Yeah.
energy, but it's about like selling resources, I suppose, that are going to benefit the
Yeah.
tribe because it's a tribal circuit. Whereas
Right.
the 1/8 is in the individual circuit. So
And it's also very much connected to like kind of being that um person who can highlight or promote what the person in front of them is maybe lacking or needing, and they don't necessarily have a full awareness around that. So I think that's where the concept of the ego comes in, because in some forms it can come off as um knowing, like it even says like using your will versus thy will. So it's like your will being like, I know what's best, or I know what you need, or I, um, this flavor of more control. Whereas thy will is kind of softer and more reciprocal and has no like stake in the game, and that's why I laughed when I read that it was the channel of surrender. Because if, if I'm with another person and I'm coming at this in a more artful, heart-centered, heart marketing, like he reflects kind of place, then I let go of the outcome of what's going to
yes.
happen. Whereas if I'm in a more egotistical, self-centered kind of approach of it, like I expect there to be something coming out of this exchange at the other end. And yeah, it's just like right now, when you have those moments where like you're kind of being like your own support in like what you're saying, I just feel like I've needed this conversation. Like I've needed to hear these words out loud
Yeah.
because, in my own life, I will say like I have always wanted to do things or create an environment that is for the better of the tribe. And at times to like a detriment, which I think is so interesting how it relates to the immune system, right? Like I might have shared on here before, I grew up in a home for a period of time that had a lot of addiction issues and family dynamic things, that just felt very hard for me. And around that time is when my immune system essentially was collapsing. And it's because maybe, I can see what the tribe needs. I can see what would benefit the tribe. I could see how it would be helpful for all parties involved. And I mean, I think it's a little different when you're a kid, right? Like when you're not fully an adult yet, there is this sense of vulnerability. And also maybe that's just not my place, right? But we all have our own experiences and da 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 da. But um that pattern still follows me till this day, where I, with those closest to me, I can see something that they may need or they can benefit from, or whether it's a a thing, or if it's a way of life, or if it's a practice, or if it's a like it says, an ideology or a truth. And I can see we're at the detriment, because I feel maybe there's a wavelength of pride there that it doesn't really fully benefit me in the highest sense, right? Like it's just coming off in that like shadowy aspect. Yeah.
It's coming from fear.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Coming from fear. Um, yeah, without a doubt. And, because I have all these narratives and stories that I can tell myself about what would happen to the family or to this group, right? If this didn't happen, or if this wasn't like bought into or believed or done. Yeah, for sure, out of fear.
And I think that's why the gift of artfulness is so interesting, because he talks about this idea of like manipulation, and how when it's from that higher frequency, it's like manipulation is actually in a positive way, or in a
Yeah.
it is supporting the tribe, because it's like you can recognize what people need and you can sell it to them in a way that actually does benefit them, rather
Yeah.
than in your own like what's in it for me kind of energy.
Yeah. Well, and also how for me, well, for anybody really who has this defined or not defined, either way, like this energy that we're talking about here is a projected channel. It's a projected type of energy. So again, needing that invitation, needing to be called out in a sense, reflected by somebody else or something outside of you, right? And that's where I think that the manipulation can take form in artfulness versus pride or boastfulness, is the shadow aspects of what Richard Rudd talks about. Because you're absolutely correct. Like if it's projected, right? If that experience comes out in the most fluid way, I guess you could say, then it's best received. And like you can meet that person where they're at, and you can, again, like kind of have this, he kind of says where your ego speaks to their ego, that in the best way that's going to suit them,
Yeah.
rather than you just kind of like inserting yourself, which is what I feel like I do. I'm like, oh, and then for me, ultimately, it just like causes like tension and annoyance and frustration out of myself. And something you mentioned to me in a voice note recently was talking about how, where you mentioned the idea of at some point giving this the space to continue that theme of being led by life. And I have to bring this up right now, because just in today I've had this entire conversation that we're having right now has happened, right? Where I can notice that I have maybe started or done something out of fear for fear for the tribe, fear for myself. And it, it's not, it's my will, not thy will, essentially. And I just think it's so funny. Like here we are, I feel like I'm having my own little like, reflection. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, it just reminded me, I wanted to say before, when I read thy will, I think of God's will. I read that as God's will. And this really is the whole idea of surrender, isn't it? Like
Right.
we as being with the human ego think we know what's best for ourselves and for everyone that we love, the tribe, the people.
Yeah.
But who are we to say what's meant to happen? Like there's this bigger, and he talks about it, this like bigger cosmic joke, cosmic plan at play. And yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just say, like, the best thing that I did for myself in like was just being more aware of it, like
Mm.
within the last couple hours, right? While being in that experience, like the best thing I could have done, the best thing I did do for myself was just to bring this awareness of acceptance that this is what's coming up for me right now, whether it be the emotion, whether it be the story going on in my head. And also taking a moment to like pause and take a few deep breaths, and then trusting that the next moment will come, and I'll go into that moment as presently as possible and keep going from there. And ultimately it's like I think it's brought us to just this really beautiful open conversation around how, like, ultimately we as humans try to force a lot of things in our life. And on the other end of that is, can we have like can we continue to have a little bit more trust in letting go of some of that like control?
Mm. Something just came to me. And maybe I'm coming at this from an individual perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a defined heart center, or ego. And even just that is funny how the ego has a few different names: the will center, the heart center, and the ego center. And I've heard a lot of different human design teachers talk about the fact that it's called that because it can be expressed at a lower frequency or a higher frequency, a heart coming from a heart place or from an egoic place. And so that's interesting as well. But you know this already, but the only gate that I have defined in the heart center, in the will center, is the 51, which is in the individual circuit. It's the only gate in the heart that's not tribal. And so a lot of my perspectives come from this very individual place. But what was the revelation? I'm losing it now because I went off on a tangent. It was about something to do with intention. And yes, that's what it was. When we're coming at things from this lower fear-based energy, we're manipulating life out of fear, and that manifests as control. But when we surrender and we're coming at it from a more playful, surrendered energy, this artful energy, where we can still manipulate our experience, but it's from this more intentional place. Does that kind of make sense? So it's like we can manipulate reality through our intentions. And I know he even talks about intentions. And there was something that I read, and I actually think it was in the Venus. I'm doing the Venus sequence at the moment. I just finished the activation sequence, and I really want to read it, but I just need a moment to find. I think it was really profound.
Yeah.
Do you
I'll
have
find
anything
it.
you want to share on what I just said while I find this?
I don't think so. We can have a moment of silence. It's okay.
Oh, I hope I can find it quickly. No, maybe I can just trust my memory. It was to do with, he used this analogy of an arrow, shooting an arrow.
Yeah.
And he talked about how the arrows are our intentions. But if our intentions are coming from a place of like fear, or if our intentions aren't pure, then it's like shooting a bent arrow. So no matter where you're shooting it, it's never gonna like hit the target. it.
Yeah.
And I just think, I wish if I can find it, we can put it in the show notes. But it was just such an interesting way of looking at how, like, you know, we can have this intention behind everything we do, but if there's any part of it is not coming from like our higher self or a pure place, it's like shooting an arrow that's bent, because it's gonna go off in all kinds of directions.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think, there's also like this quality of it, this is a big theme in business, right? And so he talks about moving into heart marketing. It's like more reciprocal, heartfelt, intentional, um, opposed to probably a little bit more of like the capitalist way of doing business. And so and he says how like you'll climb on or step on, or you'll just utilize people and resources and things for your advantage. And so when you were sharing about the arrow, I was thinking of like when we move in that, if we move from that place, that arrow is essentially like, is going to like, if it's bent, you never know who's right next to you that's going to get that hurt. Where, if we think about the arrow just going to where it needs to go, maybe the people around you or the things or the places around you don't have to be used, right? Or stepped on or crumbled or whatever it is for your benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I really can't let go of the fact that because even, I'm thinking, okay, like I read in the human design app, you can read all the different gifts, and, even in there, they talk about how the 26th is like a natural salesperson, and a lot of everything we just talked about. And yeah, I'm just like, when it comes effortlessly for me is when I have no gain, like when I'm not thinking of any like gain
No
out of
agenda.
it. No
No agenda.
agenda.
Talks about
Right.
that, doesn't it?
Yeah, there are like concepts or products that I could have been sponsored if they knew, right? Because I would just talk about it and sell it and be all about it and reflect it back in a way that that person would be like, oh, but yeah, I need that.
Mhm.
But when it's come to like some of my own things, right? I'm like, I don't know. There's so much involved, and yeah, like so much conditioning involved. But that's why I like that every chart has its own constitution to it, because for me, knowing just that little tidbit of information of it being like flavored by my North Node and how this is a later life phase, um, gives me more acceptance for where I am right now. Also, because I'm not really in that selling or entrepreneurial phase, like quite literally, like I am working, because this energy also is a lot about balance and rest. If you have this defined, I mean, for anybody really, but it talks about like needing to have this balance for work and rest, and this needing to be compensated in ways that are supportive for you. And um I'm looking down because I was just reading it. But anyway, so those things, right? And I can still utilize this energy to fit where I am right now and gain whatever experience I have, so that maybe there is going to come a point where this gift might be just will flow out of me more naturally, because back to it being the gate of surrender, I just think like, can I trust that that moment will come, and I don't need to like feel like, oh, I need to get the 26th right now. Like I need to know this gift. I need to know how to use it. I was like, it just doesn't work like that, you know? So um yeah, so it's kind of a little fun.
So true. And it's like pulling together all of these different parts of you, all of these different pieces, and different things are going to come up at different times. And like that's going back to that surrender again and again. Like life will show me what I need to know in this moment, and then the next moment, and then like everything I need to know will be revealed to me in perfect timing. And so just trusting that. And something that I've been thinking of a lot about recently in terms of resources, like material resources, because I know we've talked about this a lot. I talked about this a lot with Nikki, our coach. You know, that money isn't the only resource. Like there's so many different resources, but in our current society, we put so much value on money as like the resource. And I've thought about this a lot. And actually, Alex, my husband, and I were talking about this a while ago. We were watching Survivor, American Survivor, and the prize is $1 million. And so it's like this huge, big prize, like $1 million, life-changing, will change anyone's life. But I think the reason why, money has become so glorified as like the resource to have is because you can choose what you do with that money, right? Whereas like other resources like food, water, shelter, energy, attention, time, all of these different resources like have more specific uses. Whereas, I mean, if we think about it, we can choose what we can do with any of those resources. And that event then goes back to intention. Like, what's the intention behind how you're using the 24 hours in a day that you're given, the amount of energy that you have according to your energy type, What else? Like food, water, are you feeding yourself information, like good information that's helpful, or are you feeding yourself information that isn't actually going to support you? Like we can assess and look at all of our different material resources and reflect on how we're using them and like what our intentions are behind the way we use them. But with money, I think we have this perception that if I have all this money, I'll be able to do whatever I want. And it's like something, and I think I've been asked to learn this lesson, and I'm realizing now that I'm just kind of on this verge of like getting it, like getting the lesson. But it's just not about how much money you have. It's not about like it's the way we're relating to it, and it's also trusting that we will have everything we need.
It goes back to the way you said that it's not about how much money we have. Is that what you said? Yeah, just now. At the city of, again, like invisibility. I keep thinking I'm saying that word wrong. Sorry, guys.
Got it. You got it right.
But it goes back to sort of that theme of like, if it's not like, when I think of invisibility, I think of like not being seen, right? And if we didn't put so much emphasis on this one resource, this thing, being like the most important, right? Then would it even matter? Like, and if you don't see it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what he's saying essentially, is like, none of it really matters.
It matters. Yeah.
And again, like I hear even like, maybe this is all of the openness in my chart, like has this almost repulsion of like, well, what do you mean it doesn't matter? But there is, still a part of me that knows like, it doesn't matter. Like a lot of things, don't. We just, yeah, we put this emphasis out of our ego, right? Because that's how we've been sort of driven for so long, and that serves a purpose. It certainly does. And this is coming from two people who have defined ego centers. My heart center is also defined. And so, I think it's just something to continuously like reflect on and play with and experiment with, of like, okay, when do I hear my ego for a more intentional, pure sense? And then when do I hear my ego out of fear? And I like can't speak, me getting my nails done, like, because I also have my authority is, I have an ego authority. So I have to listen to my ego. That is actually very correct for me. And I'm learning to hear it. And sometimes it does come off very materialistically. Like, I've bought in quite a few things in the last couple of months, all because I'm like, I have this wanting for it. I woke up the other day and the loudest thing I heard right when I opened my eyes was, I want to get my nails done. So I made the plan, and it turned out to be the most beautiful set I've seen in so long. So yeah, it's just like, everything has a spectrum to it. Like, the energy
And
has a frequency.
we're material beings, like we're living on the material plane. I think that, again, going back to this idea of nothing matters, like, but it also does, everything does matter, right? And I come back to this a lot, like, nothing matters, but everything matters, because we assign our lives meaning
Right.
through our experiences, through, we're constantly making meaning out of life. And like, if nothing really matters, then like the purpose of life is to be in it and to enjoy it and to like have some fun and play, but then also to like feel the depths of what it means to be human as well. Like, I've had one of my closest friends is going through a really difficult time right now, and I've been faced with like my existential, like, I've been faced with existential, this, what's the word for that? Help me out
I
here.
say existential dread is usually the phrase that I refer to, like, because it feels like a dread, like it feels like,
Yeah,
yeah,
bringing up these feelings of like, what's the point of it all,
right,
basically. And
right,
what it's done is actually made what does matter to me so much more clear, right?
yeah,
And I was pursuing all these different things for my business, thinking I want to do this and I want to do this. And now all of a sudden, since I've got this new perspective, like through this kind of secondhand grief that I'm experiencing, and my own as well, because I knew the person, anyway, I won't go into it, but like, it's made me reassess everything, and it's made it a lot clearer, the things that I really want to focus on. And I keep going back to that question as well. Like, I also have an ego authority. What do I want? What do I want to be doing? What do I want to be focusing on? What do I want to put my energy into? Like, what do I want to eat? What do I want to watch on TV? Like, it seems trivial, but I think that that is where, like, we, especially as ego manifestors, can flex that muscle, is just in the smallest little things that seem meaningless, like getting your nails done, or what are you going to wear today, or what are you what are you going to eat? Like, that is actually how we can start to tap into those bigger things that are more important. Like, what is my purpose? What is it that I really want to like be giving to the world?
right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does have meaning.
It does. It has. I think you said it perfectly. Like, I don't, that whole, thank you for that. And, I actually want to, because you brought up playfulness, which there's a quality here of playfulness that Richard Rudd talks about. And I, I just want to read the very last paragraph in the 26th Gene Key. It says, to dance with the 26th Siddhi is to let go of all agendas. Such people are invisible in a way that most cannot understand. They are invisible because they do not care what others project on them. They do not seek to enlighten anyone. They do not really want to influence anyone at all. They truly have no agenda. They are simply here as loose cogs within the machinery of existence. They love to defy the laws that we humans cling to. They are the tricksters who love to twist and turn in the currents of existence for no other reason than that they can. Ironically, such people with no agenda have often left the greatest mark on our history of our consciousness. Because we cannot pin them down, because we cannot understand them with our minds, we either have to reject them or laugh with them. Laughter is the true legacy of the 26th Siddhi. Their laughter peals like an endless string of bells throughout the great cinnabar field of existence. And it was just like, it was a reminder for me to allow more laughter, because I think that I can be very serious about things. Um, and if not for anything, like, it doesn't have to matter, but what does matter is like my joy, and they're just like, yeah, that's it, just my joy. And that's what I want. So yeah, really good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Really, it's a really interesting one. I want to read it again and again and again. And I personally am going to spend some time reassessing. And I think this time of year is a really good time to do that. Like with this new year, is like reassessing my resources. Like, how am I using my resources? And again, it's not just money, it's time, it's energy, it's attention, it's food, it's like my home, all of these different things. So
Yeah. Mm,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
You.
Well, if anybody has the 26th gene key and is interested to carry on the conversation with Hannah and I, please let us know, comment below. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.